service for the tunnel. Look at that. Okay. Now the ubiquitous PowerPoint. So Asatro has a core product line of security gateways, as I mentioned, and also sort of covered it briefly. This is coverage, not so much in numbers, but just where we have security gateways deployed throughout the world. We have recently had a major release for the security gateway, version 8. It's just come out with a large number of upgrades, new features, and updates. And using our products, if you have a valid license, all the new versions, all the new upgrades are always available. We don't have any limitations on upgrades. We don't have hardware, even on the hardware appliances. It's all open architecture, so you can continue to evolve as we have new products and new releases. You don't have to get a forklift and chuck that one out and get another one just to take advantage of some new features. Some of the, we mentioned a little bit some of the deployment options, the hardware appliance, the software appliance, and the VM. And something we're also working closely with Varda's and one of their other vendors, ThinkGrid, is on cloud deployments using our virtual appliance. And we're doing that specifically aiming at trying to help people build managed service providers, particularly at a small level, and migrate from a traditional break and fix type infrastructure into an MSSP infrastructure without having to have that data center and backend. We also have very flexible licensing configurations. So you only have to license the subscriptions for the features and functionality that you require. And you can break the, for all intents and purposes, full UTM down to a point solution if that was what the client required. If they have an existing mail gateway, you can just cut that out of the configuration. They don't have to pay for that part of the product. Just a quick overview of some of the key highlights in version 8. We have full IPv6 support integrated into the product, including all of the major tunnel brokering systems, as well as native IPv6, but that's very limited availability here. GIP blocking, that's actually been really heavily requested in the Pacific region, so we've got full implementation of that now. We have granular rights and roles administration, so you can set up specific access rights for different staff members so that they can manage only the specific roles. You can do read-only, audit access for logging and reporting. Another new feature recently, not in version 8, but just recently, is anonymization for all logging and reporting data. So anywhere you're working where there's a high privacy issue, you can actually anonymize all the data so day-to-day IT staff don't have access to that, and it needs dual authentication by 2 people to get access to that. We've worked really heavily, as we always do, to have good online and live help on the device as well as on all our public websites. And you'll see as you go through the device, you can easily locate from the section you're in straight into that part of the administration guide. We've got very intensive graphical and detailed reporting on the box included. It's not an extra appliance. There's no requirement for extra management and reporting consoles. Change logging and configuration tracking. Again, if you've got larger IT staff and you need to manage who's done what and when. Increased, again, the availability of reporting, so we have extra functionality in reporting that's extended past version 7. We have an override for the URL filter, so you can, again, education, anywhere where you need people on the ground overriding.
Aurora is where things really start to change. And if we take a step back to when we first started launching, or when we first launched SBS, when we went out there and we sold SBS, I'm guessing the first few times, the first few years of going out there and selling it, how much of it would you say was a technical discussion versus a business value discussion? If you think about where you were maybe 10 or 15 years ago, would you say that it was probably more likely a technical discussion back then? Yeah. And this is where things have started to change. So if you think back to then, when you went out and you sold the concept of SBS, were you selling, the business value of how fantastic it is to have Outlook connected up to Exchange, for example? Or did a lot of the conversation focus on the business value, the value of having a server on premise? So if you think back to then, the value of having a server on premise was that the server was actually available at a decent speed. The concept of hosted email, or you're actually actively selling against, or trying to sell to customers who may have been using their ISP's email addresses rather than having their own email server. So with Aurora, what we need to do here is, it's a bit of a mind shift where, we've got a product based on Windows Server 2008 R2, but it doesn't have Exchange in it, it doesn't have WSUS in it doesn't have SharePoint Foundation 2010 included in it. It's really something that's designed to be the gateway for customers who need an on-premise solution, but are looking at more of a hosted solution offering for Exchange. So whether you're talking about BPOS, whether you're talking about other hosters who are providing Microsoft services, Aurora is really the product that we're targeting at the 25 user and under space. And to give you an idea, you've probably heard this number before quite a few times. The average SBS installation in Australia, based on the number of licenses we sell, is 15 users. So, so in terms of, is it something that can fill the need of a lot of existing SBS customers? Well, it depends on what the customer's doing. If they've invested heavily in terms of, you extending that solution for them, telling them that you want to take that stuff away and move it to the cloud may or may not be the right answer. But where it probably is going to be the right answer is, if we take a look at the market stats for where we're at for server deployments in SMB in the 25 and below user space. So even though Australia is one of the leading SBS countries in the world, the server penetration, and it's not just SBS, but the server penetration is only at 34% in small businesses of 24 users and under. So that's telling us that there's still a lot of opportunity out there to go after these smaller customers who, for whatever reason, may have chosen not to go down the SBS path in the past. And a lot of these customers may be ones who think that having just a little shared drive on the network is a fantastic networking solution. And it's probably better than nothing, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a fantastic solution. So we're starting to offer something different with Aurora, where we're starting to have this, a more entry-level system. It's got 25 cows included in the base price of the product. We'll see, a variety of hardware offerings coming through from the different hardware vendors. So you'll see some, different form factors versus what you may have, expected, SBS to ship on in the past. And it's something that, in reality, it's something that I think we're going to see, very, very strong sales of, because it really does start allowing us to get down to that, that very small space that SBS may not have been at the right price point previously. So if you think about the number of customer or potential customers you've spoken to about SBS, some of the things that they may raise is, well, the cost, it's too much of a capital expenditure, we don't have the money today. When we start looking at Aurora, or all of a sudden we talk about the actual capital expenditure being very, very low, and pretty much a lot of the costs start turning into OPEX. So for a lot of customers with looking at cash flow, it's something that does become a much better discussion for them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the SBS 7 side because Wayne will cover it in more detail. But, just to do the quick summary is, it's SBS as you know it today, but enhanced. We now have Server 2008 R2 included. We have Exchange Server 2010 Service Pack 1 included, and SharePoint Foundation servers included. So it's kind of what you expected it to be. There's no real surprises in terms of what's been added, what's been removed. Probably the big difference, and I'll cover it in a couple of slides' time, is that we won't have a standard version and a premium version. Instead, it will ship as a standard version, and we will have a premium add-on pack that's available. So why that's important is, if you think about today, if a customer is buying SBS, in advance you have to decide, do they need premium? So just, a show of hands. How many